in learning to see as an artist, we want to use our theoretical model of shape, form, and detail when we're observing the world and try and view things that we see in reality in this way, which will help us grab the details, grab the structure, grab the designs of what it is that we're looking for, and get it into our minds and have us really understand things in a more complex way and less of a simplistic way when we're observing the world around us. And the first way we really want to look at things is looking at things in purely a shape way, where we're kind of ignoring inner details and ignoring lighting and three-dimensionality, and we're really just kind of looking primarily first at the overall silhouette of objects. And I'll draw out her silhouette here in a general sense. And we're looking at the shapes formed by the silhouette and the asymmetry of that silhouette. And then also going into the features and then looking at the basic flat 2D shapes that are being made on a particular object that we're observing, and kind of starting to recognize just these flat shapes and look at things in this flat way. That's not to say that you want to learn things in this flat way, but rather that we want to use what we understand of these flat kind of shapes to help us understand proportions very well. So here I'm kind of just putting lines around the big shapes, the big inner shapes, and just getting these very flat, two-dimensional objects out of them, particularly on the face, and we will cover facial proportions later on. Just grasping these basic flat shapes helps us position them, size them, and space them correctly on the face so that we can have appealing looking faces and proportionately pleasing faces. So really all of these shapes, for example, this really random asymmetrical shape here, the shape here, the shape here, this weird shape at the top, this is just a way we want to look at objects, a perspective or a lens, if you wish, that we want to look at objects in the real world first. We want to look at just the general shapes that are being formed first. Moving on from that, we want to then start looking at the forms. And the forms are really the 3D elements defined by perspective and lighting, and start really trying to grasp what are the basic forms that are underlying these elements. So for example, in the head we might say, all right, well, there's a sort of a spherical form here, and these forms come down here. There's kind of a jaw-shaped form, and there's the form of the ears, and imagining what the back sides of objects would look like and the sides of objects, and getting a sense of the planes. So for example, in her head here, this is the front plane, this is the side plane, kind of feeling out the forms here, here, and kind of imagining what is the mass and the volume of the structure of just the basic form structure of her back and her chest here, and drawing through things in your mind and imagining, for example, the arm. Maybe the arm is really just a cylinder, right? Just a cylinder, and then the hand itself may be some kind of block. And looking at objects in reality and imagining what are their basic forms. So here we have perhaps another cylinder again, and the forearm as well is another cylinder, and I'm drawing through here to kind of feel out these cylindrical shapes of the arms. So we want to have a form sense when we're looking at things in the world. And then finally, once we've observed the shapes and the forms, and we're getting a feel for the forms and the three-dimensional forms, three-dimensionality of the objects, we then can take a look at the details, the color of the shirt, the texture of the skin, the color of the lips, the detailing of the teeth, for example, the details in her eyes, the details of her hair, the hair strands, and all the little fine details, really looking at things like texture and things like color, and kind of getting a feel for those things. And really, they're the last things that we really want to be concerned with when we're working. And so this is how we want to learn to see objects. We want to look at the shapes, then the forms, and then the details, and constantly be observing and studying things in this way, breaking down these complex elements into these basic categories, and helping us to really observe the world more like artists and really capture and be inspired by the things that we see in reality. Let's move on.